This is Mr. Luckett. He's an AP history teacher. He backwards plans his lessons, so his starting point is to develop a target task. That's the problem or prompt that asks his students to do the peak thinking that he's striving for in today's lesson. That brings us to lesson planning step 2, doing the target task himself. And not only is he going to do the work, he's going to type out how he does the work in a really nerdy metacognitive way. It's like setting up a camcorder aimed at his brain while he thinks. When he's done, he has a first-person narrative that reads like a story of the thinking he did to complete the target task. We call this a mastery response narrative. In a nutshell, it helps you identify all the thinking skills you need to teach your students today, which is, well, pretty crucial. Without this kind of intellectual empathy, it will be hard to guide your students' thinking in a meaningful way. Here's what that means. Today, Mr. Luckett's target task is a document-based question about how Fidel Castro came to power in Cuba. But let's say that instead of doing the DBQ himself and writing a mastery response narrative, he skips directly to planning an interactive lecture. And this is admittedly one heck of a talk. Then he lets his students go to work on explaining Castro's ascension using 3 primary sources. But as he watches his students write, he sees that many of their answers are kind of all over the place. For one thing, there were a couple pieces of important background information that kids needed before they could really understand the documents. And the ones that did spot the useful information didn't necessarily draw the strongest connections to the prompt. Luckett is clearly a bit overwhelmed by how to provide so many different kinds of feedback in the moment. Let's rewind. How might this have played out if he took the time to write a mastery response narrative rather than skipping directly to planning activities? First of all, his lecture looks a bit different. He focuses more on the information that will help kids understand the materials they're going to work with at the end of class. And second, while they're working, Luckett has a much better understanding of what kind of feedback he'll likely have to offer. He has a detailed idea of how to prompt them as they work, and he also feels much better prepared to efficiently leave written comments on his students' DBQs after class is over. In order to anticipate what kind of thinking he's really asking his students to do, Luckett always prepares both a target task and a mastery response narrative. The next mini in our lesson planning sequence is about how he uses that narrative to plan his lesson's activities. Oh, and be sure to check out the planning document in the resources below this video. It gives a full example of both a target task and its associated mastery response narrative.